often the big shifts come and how often the little shifts come and what that means for your tactics. And I mentioned a little bit in debrief, but I haven't really followed up with it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think the second day of Olympiska was a good example of how that can play out. So on the ILCA 7 course, and then also talking with people who had good races in the ILCA 6 and 4, a lot of the time winners or people who had good races found that they had a good start or they had a bad start and they bailed out into clean wind, and then they sailed in pressure, got a big shift, and that put them clear ahead, and then the rest of the race was pretty simple because they were able to make straightforward decisions with no one else impacting them. So I think maybe let's keep that in the back of our mind. Maybe the first thing I want to talk about is that the best advice I heard for the day 2 of the regatta was that there are so many little things that are happening. There were all sorts of small shifts, all sorts of little gusts and lulls, little features on the course that you could maybe tack and get a little bit out of the side of that gust, or sudden 15-degree shifts that would only last for 20 seconds or something like that, or less. So the advice that I thought was really good was only tack on those shifts, or only sail out of your way to take advantage of those opportunities if they go along with your plan. So if you kind of want to tack fairly soon and then you get that big knock, you tack on it even if it's just going to come back again in 10 seconds. Or if you're about to tack but then you see a gust 30 meters away, hold on, whatever that is, another 5 boat lengths, and then tack in the gust. So you can still execute your plan, but you take advantage of it. The opposite of that, what was dangerous to do, and part of the reason for my terrible results in KSSS Olympiska, is seeing an advantage and throwing out your plan, or making a whole new plan based on one small advantage that doesn't last for the whole course, for the whole upwind leg, for example. So I'd say like 5 times out of 6, the left side of the course was favored. I think I can say that for the whole ILCA course, ILCA 4, 6, and 7. So if you saw a gust on the right, it was only worth going for it if it played into your tactic of eventually getting left. So maybe you could get a piece of that gust and then sail all the way across the course to the left. For example. So coming back to my original piece of advice of like trying to figure out how many big advantages there are and how many small advantages there are, I think most of the time today, on Sunday, there was one really big factor, which was usually pressure on the left. Sometimes it was a big shift from the right, but there was sort of one thing per leg, one big thing that you had to take advantage of. And then there were like I don't even know if I'm exaggerating saying 15 small things on a leg, maybe 10 small things that looked like they could have been significant. So a big shift that didn't last long, or a lull that you kind of wanted to sail around. But if you started sailing around it and then got carried away, you end up just on the wrong side of the course. There were some lulls that you just had to deal with trying to get towards the overall better trend. So you could have said there's one big shift, one big factor, and 10 small factors. And so you need to link the small factors together to get to the big advantage. And that's the kind of day it was on Sunday. Trying not to get distracted and trying not to be too clever with the small things. Now that's a very complicated day because it was almost always left, but it wasn't always left. Definitely people came winning out of the right on some legs or coming back from a terrible disadvantage. So it was easy to second guess yourself, which was my bad. Second guessing yourself, trying to be too clever, trying to see the comeback option when it wasn't there. So you had to admit where the advantage was and work your way over to the advantage on the small shifts, small gusts. So another example, so like a different scenario, just to try to make this more clear, could be that you have 2 or 3 big advantages, 2 or 3 big shifts, and then a small 5-degree shift every minute and a half, let's say. And if you tack on those small shifts, you end up in the middle of the course. And then when the 2 big shifts come in, you don't have enough leverage. You're not far enough out to the side to gain enough out of the big shifts. So if you had 2 or 3 big factors, you had to get into, the 2 shifts and the 1 gust, and you had to ignore the little shifts that came through more regularly. So that's just sort of contrast those 2 examples. So that's, I think, the big thing that I wanted to talk about tactically from Olympiska. You can only execute these fancy tactical, I almost call them ideals, these big overarching plans if you have options. So for a lot of sailors, especially in the radial fleet where 66 boats, fantastic, but also in the standard fleet where there was the fleet was less than half the size of the radials, but so many people had similar boat speed that a lot of your options, if you're in that clump, a lot of your options are taken out. And it's tempting to do something very different than the group, which you get punished for because the group is quite smart. And then in Ilka 4, wasn't as big a fleet, but it was still a significant fleet, like a much bigger fleet than we've had at some other regattas. So I think everyone had the challenge that other people are making good decisions and maybe are already where you would like to be. So how do you maybe take one of these small shifts in the wrong direction and then take another one back in the correct direction so that you're still overall going the right way, but you're, 1 lane over in clearer wind. The opposite of that being you're not in the perfect lane, so you tack on one of these small shifts or tack away from a little lull and then hammer it out to the wrong side of the course, thinking it's going to come back, I'm going to be the lucky one, oh, it's going to be so good when the wind comes back from the right, like it did that one time and didn't do every other leg. So anyway, from my side, I had some really poor results, so I think maybe it's worth letting you into my thought process around that. So for me, it's a little bit affirming. I haven't trained. I've raced once a week, but racing once a week is not the same as training seriously. When you're training, you have to identify your weaknesses and then do drills that work on your weaknesses, then test out whether you've made any progress, then go back to the drawing board and figure out how you can fix the things you didn't fix. And so you can have your own plan for that. You can just follow your team's plan, but that's a bit less effective. So you want to follow your team's plan for how they're training, and then try to also hit your own personal goals for things that you know are not going well. But if all you're doing for training is just racing, it can be really fun and it's good practice. But if all you're doing is racing, you work on the things that will win you the race. You don't necessarily work on your weaknesses. So that was one thing that I knew academically as a coach, and this sort of reaffirmed that I have to train if I want to perform, and I have to take care of my body. I'm pretty exhausted from a really awesome packed September. But yeah, so do my best to drive super safe rest of the way down to Spain. Got a big ferry, Gothenburg to Kiel, and then have to access my mental space where I can perform at European Championships while still being a good coach.